Hi, everybody, and welcome to Echo Live, coming to you from the Michigan Science Center. My name is Anna, and we've got a pretty special live program planned for everybody at home today. Today, we'll be having a live animal encounter with one of our animals that is living at the Michigan Science Center normally. Now, since the Michigan Science Center is closed, I've been very fortunate to have some extra special house guests staying with me. And so our live animals have actually traveled home with me, and so they can actually star in this program. Now, we'll get started in just a moment, but while we're waiting for a few more friends to join, if you are going to be using the chat feature during this program, that is the best way to communicate with me live in real time. So if you would like to introduce yourself in the chat, let us know that you're watching, maybe tell us where you're watching from and what grade you are in. We love hearing from people from right down the street, all across the state of Michigan and even across the country. We're having a lot of fun bringing these Echo Live programs to you. So go ahead and type that in the chat. Let us know that you're here and that you are watching. Now, I've got our live animal here with me in my home studio, and we're going to meet them in just a moment. Now, we will be showing you this animal, but I'd like to play a bit of a guessing game. I'd like to see if you can figure out what live animal we are going to talk about before I show it to you. So let's go ahead and give you some clues. So here is your first clue. Your first clue is that this animal is native to an island off the coast of Africa. So let's see, anyone can guess based on our first clue. We're looking for an animal that is native to an island off the coast of Africa. If you're ready for our next clue, your next clue is that this animal has an exoskeleton. So unlike people or humans who have a skeleton inside our body, which is there to give us motion, it's also there to protect some of our more delicate organs. So this animal has an exoskeleton, a skeleton that is outside their body, not inside their body. There are a couple examples of animals with exoskeletons right up here in this picture. So things like crabs or shellfish, even beetles, right? Those things all have skeletons outside their body. I'm seeing some great guesses, but I'll give you a couple more clues. Next clue, this animal is cold-blooded. Now, cold-blooded means that this animal is not able to produce its own body heat. This animal doesn't generate its own heat, so it has to share heat with its environment. This gecko shown in this infrared image behind me, that gecko is cold-blooded. You can see that it doesn't produce body heat on its own, but people do. If you're not busy typing in the chat, trying to guess what animal we'll be showing you guys today, go ahead and touch your neck. Now, you'll notice that humans are definitely warm-blooded. We produce a lot of body heat, which is why we have to eat so much food, so that we're able to keep heating our body on our own. So we make our own body heat. We are warm-blooded, but this animal is something that is cold-blooded. Ooh, some great guesses. Let's see, let's give our final clue before we reveal our animal. The next clue is that this animal is able to hiss. Unfortunately, our animal today, our animal guest star, is not Keyboard the cat, who you might have met yesterday during Echo Live. She was not available to star in today's program, and so we are not looking for Keyboard the cat. It is not a cat, but to review our clues, this animal is native to an island off the coast of Africa. It has an exoskeleton, or a skeleton outside its body. It is cold-blooded and able to hiss. Some very, very good guesses for things like bearded dragons, which are certainly cold-blooded, but bearded dragons actually have an internal skeleton. A walrus, very good guess. Tortoise, a scorpion. A scorpion is a great guess. That's one of those animals that has an exoskeleton and is certainly cold-blooded. But the animal we are looking for is actually a Madagascar hissing cockroach. Now, I've got a colony of Madagascar hissing cockroaches right here inside this tank. We've got one of them that's actually trying to give us a close-up view of one of our cockroaches. So let's see if we can zoom in on this cockroach. And I'll go ahead and turn off my virtual background once we get a better close-up view. So we have a few colonies of Madagascar hissing cockroaches at the Michigan Science Center. These guys are now staying with me in my house, but they are really great pets, actually. They're really good teaching tools to talk about some different animal adaptations. Now, these animals live inside this enclosure. Keep my hand out of there so it focuses on our friend that's climbing up the glass. But they do live in this enclosure where we keep all of their food and water. They've got some bedding down there for them to burrow in. And then we've got some different things for recreation in there as well. But let's talk about some questions that make these animals unique. So we'll be talking about these animals more specifically. So Madagascar hissing cockroaches are native to this island of Madagascar. If you've ever heard of the movie Madagascar, this is that island they are referring to in that movie. It is a real place, and that is where these Madagascar hissing cockroaches come from. Now, if we were to get specific in terms of zoology and classify this animal, we would say that it is part of the phylum Arthropoda. Arthropoda meaning that it is an arthropod. It's also part of the class Insecta. So it is an arthropod and it is also an insect. But most specifically, if we were to talk about how to specifically classify this animal, we would use its species name. The species name for a Madagascar hissing cockroach is Gromphidorina portentosa, which is a total mouthful, but it's a great tongue twister to get everyone involved at home. Let's try repeating that after me. Say Gromphidorina portentosa. Now that name is a mouthful, so we very rarely call these animals by this really long species name. We normally refer to them by their common name, which is a Madagascar hissing cockroach. Now, I've got a couple more of these friends to show you. Now, if you can count, I know our cockroach on the glass is kind of wiggling around, but tell me, if you are familiar with insects and what makes an insect, tell me, how many legs do insects have? You might be able to count them. As our friend climbing up the glass wiggles around, it might be a little difficult, or use your prior knowledge. How many legs does a cockroach or an insect have? I see a couple people commenting about how much they do not like bugs, and so this is actually a great way for you to experience them while they're nice and far away. But I will assure you that these cockroaches actually make really, really great pets and teaching tools. These are not the same species of cockroach that we would find outside or native to Michigan or the United States. They're a bit larger, a bit slower, and so they are pretty fun to work with. I see some great answers in the chat. If you said that insects have 6 legs, you are correct. Insects have 6 legs, but insects are not the only types of arthropods. Arthropods also include arachnids, things like tarantulas. And so we've got some diagrams of our 3 different types of animals up here on the screen. And we'll talk about the ways we classify an insect versus an arachnid. One way to tell is by how many legs that animal has. So insects have 6 legs, whereas arachnids like tarantulas have 8 legs. But that's not the only distinction between an insect and an arachnid. It's also important to note their different body segments. So there's a diagram of a human body over here for reference when we're talking about these different body segments. And so insects have 3 body segments. They have a head, which is very similar to a human, which has a head where most of their neural organs are held. And they have a thorax, which on a human we might call the chest. And so in that thorax, that's where all 6 of their legs are attached. So only legs that are attached to the thorax are true legs. If you see any other appendages like antenna, those might come off different body segments like the head. So they have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. The abdomen in humans is where we might find most of our digestive organs. And the same thing goes for insects. This is where all of their digestive and reproductive organs are held. But arachnids, like tarantulas, only have 2 body segments. So they still have an abdomen, which houses most of their digestive and reproductive organs, but they have a fused segment on the top called the cephalothorax. Cephalo means brain, And then thorax is that chest region that we found in the insect and in the human. So they have this fused upper segment where all of their legs are attached, and then an abdomen down below. So we'll take a closer look at some of our Madagascar hissing cockroaches. I have another container with cockroaches, so we can take a little bit closer look at these guys. So I've got a few of them here in this temporary container. Now, don't worry, they don't live in this container. They live in the big enclosure with the rest of their friends. But if we want to take an up close look, I can actually switch my camera over to this document camera so we can get a look at them from above. Now, you'll notice that these cockroaches are very, very large, much larger than cockroaches that we would find outside or in our homes. But these cockroaches are only native to Madagascar. They really enjoy living in that warm, very humid climate that they would find there. So here we have to control their climate pretty well in order to keep them happy. Now, there are two different types of cockroaches in this enclosure. They are the same species of cockroach, but one is a male and one is a female. Now, you'll notice a big difference between them just by looking at them from above, which is their size. But actually, their size has nothing to do with the sex of this cockroach. So males and females can be different sizes just based on their genetics. We often get females that are much larger than males, especially when they are full of eggs. But we also get males that are much larger than females. We want to know how to tell these two sexes of cockroach apart. We have to look for some different features of this cockroach. So if we look at these pictures, so we'll use these pictures as a reference, and then we'll take a closer look at our two living cockroaches in our enclosure here in the studio. So if we look at this first picture, one way to tell the difference between a male cockroach and a female cockroach is by these horns on their head. So the male has these large horns, which are pretty unique to these Madagascar hissing cockroaches, but only the males have them. They use these horns for digging or burrowing, but also for fighting other males when they are looking to find a mate. Females don't have the horns on their head. Their head is relatively flat, since they don't need to use them to fight other females. The other way to tell the difference, because this trick only works when these cockroaches are fully grown. When these cockroaches are still in their nymph stage of life, when they are still small and still developing, sometimes those horns aren't easy to see, or they're just not quite as pronounced yet until they get much older. So the better way to tell them apart is actually by looking at their underside and looking at this very last segment of their abdomen. So in males, they've outlined the difference between a male and a female hissing cockroach using this very last segment of their abdomen. In a male, their last segment is actually broken into two pieces. So they have this, or three pieces really, but they have these smaller segments all kind of outlined in this diagram here. And that is how you would tell that this cockroach is a male. Whereas in a female, their final segment is one large fused segment. This is likely because the females need to leave space in their abdomen in order to hold their egg sac, which we call an ootheca. So that ootheca is how they hold eggs inside their body, and hissing cockroaches actually give live birth. So even though they hold an egg sac or a sac full of eggs carrying their young, the eggs will actually hatch inside their body, and then they're released through the end of the abdomen of the female hissing cockroach. So females have one large segment, whereas males have this broken up segment. So let's take a closer look at our cockroaches that we have here in the studio. So let's take out this one first, and you can tell me in the chat, is this a male or a female cockroach? Take a close look at the features that we talked about and tell me, is this cockroach a male or a female? So right now we're only looking at the top part of this cockroach, so I'll try to focus my camera a little better. There we go. I'm seeing some good guesses. So if you look closely on its head, you can see that this cockroach has some pretty large horns. So this is a male hissing cockroach. It has those really, really large horns on its head, especially if I turn him sideways. We'll see if he tries to hold on or if I'm gonna have to secure him like a seatbelt. So if I turn him sideways, you can see those horns. So let's flip him over. We'll see if he's happy with that. These guys are pretty good for using for this demo. So if we flip him over on his end just for a moment here, we can see that his final body segment or his final segment of his abdomen is broken up into those 3 pieces. So that confirms that this cockroach is a male. So let's take a close look at our female cockroach, just so we have something to compare to. Now she is smaller, but again, the size has nothing to do with the sex of this cockroach. So her head is flat. You can tell that this is a female. She doesn't have those horns to use for digging. And if we flip her over, see if she's going to be as well behaved as our other friend, we have one large body segment or one large final segment to the abdomen. So confirming that this one is a female. So we'll go ahead and we'll place them back inside their enclosure here. She's not going to want to. I might have to give her a little bit of support. There we go. All right, so our 2 hissing cockroaches are back in their container. Now, this is a great time to pause to see if anyone has any questions that they might like to answer or like me to answer about our pets that we're talking about today. So go ahead, if you have questions about our Madagascar hissing cockroaches, please type them in the chat. I would love to answer them. And now is also a great time, as always, to thank our sponsors. So our Echo Live programs are brought to you because we have some very generous sponsors who we are very thankful for. People like the DTE Energy Foundation and individual donors like you who are at home, who are enjoying our Echo Live programs. You are able to make a tax-deductible donation to the Michigan Science Center using a link that we post on our Facebook page or by visiting the Michigan Science Center's website. So big thank you. We are truly enjoying bringing these presentations to you every weekday. So if you do, or if you would consider donating to the Michigan Science Center, we would appreciate that so much. But let's see if we got any questions in our chat. Do they bite? That is by far my favorite question that comes out of any live animal presentation that we do. Do they bite? There's a better question, and the better question should be, will they bite? So anything that has a mouth or has teeth is able to bite. Humans have a mouth and teeth. They can bite if they want to, if they feel threatened. But these cockroaches, and just like people, unless they have a reason to bite, they really won't. And so they do have the ability to bite. They do chew their food, but their mouths are so small that I might not even feel it. So I actually don't know if I've ever been bitten by one of these cockroaches. So they can bite, but they don't bite because we treat them with respect, like you should to all animals. Another question is, what is their lifespan? These hissing cockroaches live quite a bit longer than cockroaches that are native to Michigan. These cockroaches actually live to be about 5 years old, which is a pretty long time for an insect. So we are very lucky to have these as pets. We take really good care of them. And so sometimes we can have them live up to 5.5 or 6 years, but that's about the average lifespan of one of these cockroaches. Another great question is, what do these cockroaches eat? Now, these cockroaches are a very important part of the world ecosystem because these hissing cockroaches are a decomposer. If you know what a decomposer is, you might know what they eat, but mainly these cockroaches, like all decomposers, eat decaying organic matter. So these cockroaches are terrestrial, meaning that they live on the ground. And so they'll eat any sort of fallen fruit or decaying vegetation. But since they'll eat almost any sort of decaying organic matter, if they do find a dead animal, they'll eat that as well. In captivity or at the Science Center, we normally feed them a diet that consists of oatmeal for protein, and we supplement it with some different forms of produce like lettuce or strawberries as kind of a special treat for them. Are they good at seeing? Not necessarily. So they have a variety of other sensory organs that they rely on more than their sense of sight. So you'll notice that these cockroaches do have antennas. And so those are really highly adapted body parts that they use for sensing their environment around them. So their sense of eyesight, not great, but they do have other ways of making up for that. Let's see. How big are they when they're fully grown? So these ones are full adults. So these ones have gone through their entire molting cycle. They actually molt or shed their exoskeleton, kind of like a snake sheds its skin, while they grow to their full size. And so if you saw them on my hand, or if I placed my hand back down next to the container just for scale, they grow pretty large. So they're about 1.5 to 2 inches long when they're fully grown. But just like human genetics, they can kind of range in size. Are they safe with me? I think these cockroaches are fantastic pets, and so I really love having them here. It's actually been a really fun treat to have them around, so that my family has gotten to meet them as well. But we do take really good care of them, so they are safe with me, I assure you. And don't worry, when we travel in the car to and from the Science Center, they go into the smaller container just in case, so that we don't ever risk them flipping over or being injured while we're transporting them. Are they actually from Madagascar? Native to Madagascar, yes, but these cockroaches are not actually from Madagascar. They've never been to Madagascar. These are actually from a pet shop. And so pet shops breed these cockroaches, not normally to be pets, even though they are great pets, but normally they breed these cockroaches for food for other animals. They are full of protein. They're really, really large. And so they have a lot more protein on them than crickets might. And so people will actually feed these to their pets. These ones won't be food. Now, I see one question that keeps coming up, and I've actually saved this point for last so that we can talk about it all together. And the question is, do they hiss, or why do we call them hissing cockroaches? That is a great question, right? That's part of their name, so it must be a pretty important fact about these cockroaches, but they actually are able to hiss, which is kind of unique in the animal kingdom. Normally, only mammals really have the ability to make that hissing sound. Snakes are an exception, but these cockroaches are an exception as well. Now, they don't hiss like you or I, but the process is kind of similar. Whereas people will kind of take a deep breath and kind of purse your teeth together and push the air out. The cockroaches do the same thing, but just not with their mouth. Their head is actually covered in tiny little holes that are called spiracles, and they actually push air out through those holes very, very quickly, which allows them to make that hissing noise. So I don't really have the ability to make these ones hiss if they don't want to. These ones are pretty used to being held. Our male did hiss at me just a little bit when I flipped him over. So these cockroaches hiss for a variety of reasons. They hiss to communicate with each other. So they're actually able to communicate with other cockroaches by the different pitch and sound of their hiss. But they also use it to ward off predators. Now, I'm not a predator to these cockroaches, but they don't always know that. So sometimes when I'm moving them between their enclosures or flipping them over to talk about their abdomen, they might hiss at me as kind of a warning that they're unhappy or that they think I might be trying to hurt them, even though I'm not. And so it can be difficult to get ours to hiss because they eventually get kind of used to being handled during programs like this. So since these ones are pretty difficult to make hiss, and I definitely don't want to force them here in the studio, so I actually pulled up a video to share. Now, this hissing cockroach is probably a newer pet, or not used to being handled as often as our cockroaches that we've met so far. So you'll notice that anytime the human touches or comes near this hissing cockroach, it does hiss very, very loudly. Let me make sure I shared my computer sound. I did. And then we'll play this video. You'll get to hear this cockroach hiss. It's actually incredibly loud. And then we'll bring it back to the studio. you weren't able to hear that, you can always look up on YouTube some more videos of Madagascar hissing cockroaches actually making that hissing noise. But that is an adaptation that these animals have that makes them very, very unique. So not all insects have that ability to hiss. Other insects make noise by different ways, like crickets rubbing their legs together, but these cockroaches are able to hiss, which makes them incredibly unique. So this is about the end of our program today. I'll answer one last question, which is, what are their predators? Now, out in the wild, any bird would be really lucky to find something like one of these hissing cockroaches. So birds, snakes, other reptiles that might be native to Madagascar would be the natural predators of these cockroaches. So anything that's looking for a nice protein-filled snack would like one of these if they can get past that kind of hard, crunchy exoskeleton outer shell. Yes, you can buy them at the store. And so if you are looking to have some hissing cockroaches as pets, contact your local pet store, see if they have these around for you to purchase. They do make great pets. They're very, very low maintenance and easy to care for. And I highly recommend them if you're looking for a new pet or a friend to have in your house, especially right now when we're all spending so much time at home. So that's about all the time we have. Thank you guys so much for joining us for our Echo Live program today. If you enjoyed the program, as always, please share this video on your Facebook page. If you'd like to be notified when Echo Live starts each day, make sure that you are following the Michigan Science Center on Facebook. So like the page, follow our posts. That will alert you in your notifications when our programs start every weekday at 2:30 p.m. And so again, share this video, and we hope we will see you back here tomorrow for Echo Live at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your day.